What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there, were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
Hello, brave souls. Tonight's story is called Working as an Aussie Bushranger, The Radiation Pit. This is part 2 of this Working as an Aussie Bushranger series, so if you haven't checked out the first one, I'll put a link in the description to get you there. The story was written by Ranger10123 from r/nosleep. I wasn't expecting so many questions on my last post. You/Livson even said I seemed like a cool guy, and by God, that kept me smiling all day. Of course, they also called me weird, but I don't have much of a semblance of normal, so I suppose they may not be wrong. A few of you expressed interest in the radiation pit, and I was going to answer, but then realized that I don't actually know all that much about it. Like, at all. It kind of just exists. And since it's been a constant in this place for as long as I can remember, it's never really occurred to me to look further into it. But for you, my adoring fans, I decided to go poke around for a bit. Only one problem. I had to bring Lizzie with me. When we spoke to the boss, he said that I had to be the one showing her around, so now I can't go anywhere without her shadowing me and taking notes. The boss also said I couldn't kill her again, because he can be a downer like that. I told her I can't make any promises because she can be really annoying, but he ate 3 of my toes and a finger, so I decided I should probably just do as he says. At least I get off souvenir duty now, I suppose. Don't worry about my toes, though. They're growing back already, and it was only a little bit of insufferable agony. Builds character, I reckon. We set off yesterday at about 4 p.m. We were supposed to leave in the morning, but some tourists were freaking out about their kid being chased by former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, or something, and we were held back until midday. At which point, we decided it was safest to wait until 2 p.m., because you never, ever go out in the sun at 2 p.m. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Lizzie suggested we wear sunscreen if we were so worried about getting burnt, and I told her getting burnt was the least of my worries at 2 p.m. But she just laughed. She does that a lot. I don't think she realizes how things work around here yet. The pit is about half an hour's trek away from the park's entrance and our cabins, along one of the many bush tracks formed under the trampling of decades of feet. You can tell when you're getting close because your hair starts to singe, especially in your nose. Then your eyes start to water. Then, if you loiter nearby for too long, your fingers start twisting on their own accord and little black spots grow that almost look like eyes. I've never hung around beyond that point, but one time an old ranger disappeared while checking on the pit, and we had 10 new, skin-colored snakes hunting tourists in the area with a hard shell over their heads that almost seemed like fingernails. It was Lizzie's first time at the pit, and she wasn't taking it well. "What the hell is this?" she hissed when she reached its edge, scrunching up her nose as the searing odor that wafted out from under the tattered blue tarp. Is this a garbage pit? In the middle of the forest? We're supposed to be preserving?" "No," I said. "It's not garbage. It kind of is, I guess, since we throw most of our trash in there, but that's not only because the pit likes it. It eats most of it within the day, so it's not like we're littering. I don't litter. I'm not a monster." "Then what is it?" "It's the radiation pit." She looked at me, then looked at the pit, then back at me. "Why is there a radiation pit in the middle of our park?" I didn't like the way she called it our park, but I had more important things to focus on. "I don't know," I responded, untying the tarp from the trees around the pit. "That's what I'm here to find out." We had to cover the pit with a new tarp every Friday, since it managed to eat through them in the span of a week or so. One time we forgot, and a bunch of koalas got into it. It's always bad news when something living gets in there, because they don't come out the same. That's how the drop bears came about, the little buggers. Luckily, they were only animals that have ever managed to get in on our watch. Actually, scratch that. There was that one time that Sydney threw in a redback spider. one of Australia's deadliest, and a heroic attempt to create a real-life Spider-Man. Needless to say, it didn't end as she hoped it would. But for a sentient 6-foot-tall redback, Roger is actually pretty chill. Anyway, I undid the tarp and whipped it away from the pit before it could fall inside and be eaten. Hesitantly, with a single bead of sweat rolling down her forehead, Lizzie peeked over the steep drop in dusty earth. The hole was absurdly dark from its relatively small depth. Even in the middle of the day, any light that managed to fall in there vanished without a trace, leaving only a void of nothingness that compels you to fill it with something. I've seen people throw themselves in there just to fill that void. The darkness ended about 20 meters down in a writhing mass of green tubes, which exuded a weak, neon light that stood no chance against the darkness. I knew, as she leaned over the edge, the tubes would turn to her with remarkably pitiful expressions for hollow, translucent masses with no faces or discernible features. She stuck out her lower lip. "Aw, it looks sad." I almost recommended she go down there and help them, but remember what the boss said. Besides, if she went down there alive, who knows when she'd come back out again. So instead I just said, "I seen them strip flesh from bone," and she turned away from them, making a face. "Why are we here?" she asked. "Because I don't think we should be anywhere near this thing without hazard suits on." I didn't want to tell her about the post I made or any of my true intentions, in case she tattled on me and I got my tongue ripped out. "I'm bored," I said instead. She looked at me sideways. "There have got to be way better ways of entertaining yourself than getting radiation poisoning." "Oh, I don't think it's actually radioactive. Just alive, probably," I said to comfort her. But from the distressed look on her face, I guessed it didn't work. "Besides," I continued, "if you had brought any books with you, then I wouldn't have to find any way to entertain myself." She scowled. We'd had this argument before, considering she brought literally 3 cars up here with her, even if she didn't know it, and considering just how much of a nerd she looked like with her uptight expression and neat uniform, I find it ridiculous that she brought not a single book with her to hold me over until our next supplies drop. I had finished my last one a few days before, at that point, and there's really not much else to do out here a lot of the time, especially when Gordon takes a special delight in giving me the boring work. "We came up here to help people in our planet," she said tersely. "Not read." I didn't tell her that none of us were here for that reason except for her. "Oh, actually, that reminds me. You know the cars that she brought up here with her? There were 3 of them, all identical. Sure to become a problem at some point if she kept dying and showing up again without her memories. Well, they're gone now. Just the day after my first post, I looked out to check the parking lot and boom, they're gone. Their tire tracks lead out into the foliage, even though all the trees and undergrowth should have made passage in such large vehicles impossible. I didn't investigate further. If people want to drive into the bush without the proper gear, well then, it's their bloody funeral. Not that they're beginning a funeral, of course. Just a nice new meal for the pit. Anyway, we spent about an hour poking around the pit. Now that I was out there, I really didn't know what I was looking for. Lizzie began taking notes. She takes a lot of notes. But this time I actually appreciated it because I'm pretty sure that's what we're supposed to do when we're investigating things. I tried spearing one of the tubes on a long stick with a sharpened end. It let out a wheezy death cry, then lost its glow, and the tubes around it immediately turned on its corpse. They savaged it and it was gone within a few milliseconds. Then they turned on the stick, swarming up in waves in an attempt to reach my hands in the freedom beyond. I shook them off. Lizzie suggested taking photos, but I told her she should never take photos out here. It's not safe. I think she just thought I was trying to be contrary, because she didn't speak to me again until we left. When we got back to the main camp, Lizzie split off to head to her cabin and get cleaned up. I continued on to the souvenir shop to laugh at Sydney's boredom, since she had been forced to man the desk while I took care of Lizzie. When I arrived, though, I was mildly put off to find that her day had probably been far less more boring than my own. She was engaged in a battle with a flock of rabid magpies, who fly above the small wooden shop in a cloud, bumping over shelves and into windows with the grace of a blind poodle. Every now and then, one or a few would swoop down at Sydney, claws poised at her eyes, but they would always be beaten away at the last second. "If you want my eyes," she shrieked, banished a toy didgeridoo like a baseball bat, "then come and get 'em, you maggots!" A coordinated team of 5 magpies chose that moment to swoop at her, and she managed to hit them all with the didgeridoo in one epic sweep. Then, Using it like a mortar and pestle, she ground their prone bodies into the floor below, smearing blood and guts and various other fluids into the half-rotted floorboards. It was pretty bloody, but there's really no other choice in swooping season. I ducked into the shop and armed myself with 2 polished boomerang souvenirs, using the one end of them to spear a bird that was swapping at me with their ear-piercing shriek. Seriously, why did they make the edges of these toy boomerangs so sharp? Within a few minutes, most of them were dead, and those that weren't had fled back to their nests to plan their next offensive. We wiped down our weapons with the toilet paper from the drop toilet outside and put them back on the shelves, most of the bird gore removed. "So," I said, panting and wiping guts from my eyes, "how was your day?" "Ugh," she groaned, wringing blood from her hair. "So eventful. I didn't get a spare moment." "Uh-huh," I said, feeling annoyed. First, we had to chase out Tony Abbott, because he kept leaving dead kitty parts around the front driveway and scaring away the tourists. "Uh-huh," I said again, feeling even more annoyed. And then Roger came by and we got caught up. He tried to rip me open and lay eggs in my gut, but apparently he's found himself a cute boyfriend, so that's nice, she continued. "Uh-huh." And then 3 magpies showed up, of course. It's swooping season. It's always swooping season. I sighed, cursing my luck. Of course, that's the day I'm off desk duty, is the day it becomes interesting. "Is that all?" I asked, somewhat defeated. "Oh yeah, and the old god tried to awaken again and the boss had to rip out his tentacles. Kinda hot." "That's my dad," I reminded her, wondering how the day would get any worse. She didn't seem too repentant, and I almost decided to kill her before I remembered she can't actually come back to life like Lizzie could, and I would probably miss her if she was gone for good. So, yeah. That was my day yesterday. Pretty normal, all things considering. But I wanted to let all know that I'm making an effort to look into the things you want to know about. I'll ask the boss about the radiation pit next time we find a worthy sacrifice, so I can find out more, since he's been here longer than all of us. And since there was interest in the comments, I think next time I'll tell you guys the story of Ava and the birthday massacre. Until then, see ya.